Good morning. I'm Bob Quigley, and I presently live in Brookinge, Oregon. And this morning we're going to tie you a western green drake cripple tied with a special new material, emu feathers. This fly was originally developed on Northern California's Fall River for imitating the emerging stage of the western green drake. And when we say emerging stage, we mean when the bug is just starting to hatch and its wings are coming unfolded and its shuck is peeling off the back. First we place the hook in the vise, and we're tying this on a number 10 2X long shank Mustad 9671. Our first step is to take our yellow or chartreuse type thread, and we're going to attach it about a quarter of the shank back from the eye, wrap a few turns, snip off the thread, and then we just wrap the thread back to the barb of the hook and let the bobbin hang. Okay? Now what we're trying to create here is the effect of the nymph coming off, peeling off the back of the fly, and you'll find that your green drake nymphs will be anywhere from brown to olive brown to very dark, sometimes almost black. The one thing you want to remember while tying this fly, that as the fly becomes a dun, it changes in color, and the dun is olive with a very distinct yellow or chartreuse ribbing to it. So we're going to kind of get the tailing shuck of the nymph, which can be brown to olive brown. We're going to use a little bit of marabou that we just clipped off the inside of a feather, and we're going to make it about half the length of the hook shank. We'll come back to the barb, pinch on the marabou, bring the thread up, make a couple turns to secure it. Okay, now what this marabou does as it gets wet, it absorbs water and causes the fly to kind of sink below the surface film, kicking the wing up, giving the appearance that the bug is crawling out or trying to hatch. The next step we're going to do is we're going to tie in our rib material. As the bug emerges out of its nymph shuck, it starts to become a dun, and it takes on the coloration of a dun, which will be a very distinct, nice, bright olive color to olive brown with a very distinct ribbing. And this is what the fish really key in on, is this distinct ribbing of the body. It's very bright yellow in color, and it's important to use a nice distinctive yellow or almost chartreuse in color. We'll attach it right on top of the hook, right where we tied the marabou in. We'll wrap a little bit forward, clip it off, continue to wrap up even our body, and we'll wrap back to where we first wrapped in the rib. Normally on a dry fly, we don't do that much wrapping on the underbody, but this is going to take on the shape of an emerger or a nymph, so the body's going to be fairly plump. There's one thing you want to remember, the scientific name grandis, or green drake, or Fimulara grandis. It has a very chunky bug, it's a very thoracic bug, it's a very stocky type bug. So if you make your body a little thicker or a little chunkier to represent this dun hatching out, that's okay. We're going to go with olive brown fur. You can also wrap on olive brown marabou. This type of fly, use your creativity on materials. The main thing is you just want a little bit of action in this shuck, and you want to get the right color and the right distinct ribbing to represent the natural segmentation of the fly when it hatches. Okay, we've mixed a little bit of this rabbit fur and angora together. Okay, and we're going to dub it and make our body. And we're going to dub our body up about 2/3 of the way up the hook shank. Okay, so we put the dubbing on, we wrap it clockwise, make a turn or two, that adheres it to the hook, so now when we spin it, it makes a noodle or a little bit of natural type of shaggy yarn. Okay? You'll find this fly usually hatches from anywhere from May through June to in some of the Rocky Mountain states, clear into July. It's a famous hatch on many rivers, and the western green drake cripple seems to be the fly most of the time that catches the fish when they're feeding on emergers or duns. We wrap up about 2/3 of the way. If we have a little extra yarn, we can take it off, or we can actually just wrap it right in there to build the fly up. You'll notice that the fly goes from thin to thick, kind of matching the natural taper of the insect. Take our yarn or floss, we'll twist it so it's a nice tight rope, and we'll just wrap it up through the body, and we get a nice distinct segmentation. See that? That's very important. Like I say, you can wrap this through marabou, you can wrap it through olive brown hare's ears. The main thing is the distinction in that rib that matches that natural insect. If you ever take the time to use a stomach pump, or if you've ever seen these emergers taken out of the gullet area or the throat of a trout, the one thing you really see that's distinct is how yellow that rib is when that bug is freshly hatched. And that's what the fish is looking for. Okay, so now we have our tail. We'll just kind of spruce it up a little. Our rib body. And this represents the emerging body and the shuck peeling off the fly. Now we're going to make the thorax and the wings and the legs of the emerging dun, or the adult, trying to escape up to become airborne to fly away. This is when the bug is most vulnerable. It has trouble, it's struggling, it's wiggling, it's trying to hatch, and the fish come up, and particularly the larger trout in many streams will key in on this situation. In here, we're just going to use a little piece of olive foam, and we're going to clip it when we tie it in, just to remove some of the bulk from the fly. All right? We attach it, make a few wraps, and we're just going to wrap a little ball representing the thorax and where the bug will swell out and start to gain size as it becomes an adult. When we tie this off, we're not going to tie it off right in front. We're going to tie it off right on top over the foam. So we put the foam over the top. We come over the top with the thread. And there's a reason why we do this. This leaves the bottom of the fly nice and smooth. It doesn't show a line of the foam being tied in, and it gives the natural look of the thorax, which is very waxy, very freshly hatched. And that's why the foam also helps to facilitate the front of the fly as the back part's absorbing water and the hook starts to sink. The foam floats the fly and keeps the front part of the fly on the surface. So we're actually tying half nymph or emerger and half dun or adult. Okay, so we have two bugs in one here. So now we have our thorax in, and we have two more remaining steps, and that's what we're going to do, is we're going to apply the wing. Now, for years, I've used deer hair on this fly, elk hair, a lot of different animal hairs that are hollow and help float it. Here, several years ago, through experimenting with fly tie materials, I came up with something that's just superior to any kind of animal hair for floating this fly. And these are emu tail feathers, which I specially prepared and dyed to match the color of the emerging adult wing. We have some that are mottled olive, and we have some that are purple and kind of black. The natural insect has a very dark grayish, sometimes you can almost use a black wing. The legs and the thorax are kind of mottled, kind of yellow, and a little bit of black. It has a spotted effect. So on the wing, I like to use a combination of yellow olive and purple emu feathers. What makes these feathers so nice is that, number one, they're very light. They're as light as straw. And everybody knows how straw floats in the wind or how it floats on the water and you can't sink it. But straw is very brittle and it's not very durable. Well, this particular bird solved that, and these feathers here are very durable. They're a little bit hollow, and they're more durable than any elk hair, moose hair, or deer hair you could ever put on this fly. We've selected some feathers there. It looks a little purple. I think I'm going to add a few more olive strands to make this wing just about the size of the natural's wings. Okay? So let's pick a few more strands of the emu feather. We'll get some that have some dark tips and some olive barring. This is where you use your creativity in fly tying, where you go out, you collect the insect, you look at the insect, you bring it back, you tie the fly, and you go back out to the river and you fish it, and you see how the trout respond to it, and then you make adjustments, and they're the final judge on it. And that's what's nice about it. It's kind of a creative art form, but it's also a little bit of experience and trial and error, and Mother Nature usually makes the final judgment on that. Now, I've been trying to get the trout to tell me exactly what they want in this fly, so I don't have to go back to my fly tying bench, but so far, I haven't been quite able to speak their language. Okay? So now we have a considerable amount of hairs. Maybe there's about 22 to 25 hairs in there, and we've just kind of evened them with our finger. You can put this in a stacker if you want, like most hairs. And we're going to place it and measure it right on top of the hook. We're going to make it just about the length of the hook shank. Then we're going to move it in front of the thorax, and we're just going to secure it with a couple wraps like that. Okay? The green drake cripple wing goes forward, and forward kind of imitates like the fly is fluttering or taking off for flight. Okay, and the trout see that silhouette and they key in on it. They see the dragging shuck underneath the surface and they think, aha, there's an insect that is getting ready to escape for flight, but he's still struggling. I can just go right up and suck him right in. Okay, we've tied that wing in. We've made a few wraps in front of it to stand it up. The nice thing about the emu feather, the wind passes through it. It hits on the water. It bounces. It's so light. It's a superior material. And last year, fishing on Fall River, Circle 7 Gas Ranch, when we started trying these on our different Hex and green drake cripples, it was just amazing how the fish loved the coloration in it, how it hit on the water so natural, and how long and durable the wing lasted. You notice we have these butts on the end, and we just clip them off. We do that for several reasons. Number one, it builds a little more bulk in the thorax, facilitates flotation, and it's just an easy way to tie the wing on the fly. All right? We have one more step to do on this fly before we finish it, and that's put on the hackle, which imitates the legs and helps float it. And we have just the right type of hackle for that, which would be kind of a yellow dyed barred grizzly saddle hackle. Okay? We want to take just the best part of the hackle where we have the nice stiff barbels that'll float it, and we want to strip the barbels away from the stem, cut it off like so, then take a few off the inside part of the stem. This is going to, as we wrap it on the hook, this is going to intersect the area of the fly or the shank first, and it will allow these barbels to spread out as we start to hackle the fly. So we take this, we tie it in behind the wing, all right, like so. Want the shiny side toward us, dull side forward. Want the barbels going forward. A few wraps behind the wing with a thread. A few more wraps in front. Clip the hackle stem off. Okay, now we're ready to make a few turns of the hackle and complete the fly. If you're fishing this fly in fast water, you want to use maybe 10 wraps, 12 wraps of hackle. If you're fishing on a spring creek, the floatability of it, you can get away with about, 4 or 5 turns of hackle. So it's a matter of where you're fishing the fly, how much hackle you put on. We've put 2 turns of hackle on. We'll put 3, 4, and a couple turns in front. Just hold the wing back, get it out of the way. Swing material is very resilient. It pops right back in. You can just bend it, move it any way you want it. We have 5 wraps on there now, a couple wraps in front. We'll bring our thread up to the eye of the hook and go over the hackle a couple times. Okay? And then we'll try not to cut the thread while we snip this hackle off. Okay. Now we're going to whip finish the fly to complete it. We just hold everything back, make a few more turns, pull some thread off, and now we're going to apply a whip finish. About 4 or 5 turns. Pull it in. Clip the thread. I'm going to take the wing and put it in the forward position. Inspect your fly. Preen it up. At this point, we're going to put a little bit of head cement where we finish the fly off on the thread, just to make sure that after you've landed about your 45th trout on this fly, that everything still holds together. Okay? Just pull the wing back a little. Apply a little cement on top, a little underneath. The fly is completed, and there we have an emu wing western green drake cripple. Take it out, fish it. I've had a lot of fun with it. I'm sure you will too.
Hi, Gene Kazmarek. I'm Mission Peak. Oh, Jesus.
Go ahead, come on.
Hi, Gene Kazmarek, Fremont, California. I'm going to be demonstrating the green-butted skunk. My style of green-butted skunk is slightly different. I use a butt of twisted floss and wire. My body is ostrich herl. My wing is actually skunk, a little different than you've seen in the past. Preparation for tying is attaching your thread to the hook as you would have done in any other fly. My hooks that I'm using here happen to be the Daiichi 2051. Any standard steelhead hook will work just fine. Advance your thread almost to the rear and to the point of the hook, attaching anywhere from 2 to 4 strands of floss. Then along with the floss, you're going to attach fine oval tinsel. I prefer just plain wire. I think the look of the fly is far improved by just using a fine oval wire. But if you prefer a thicker and larger looking twist to your particular fly, then using oval tinsel would work just as well. You will take and twist both the wire and the floss to the rear of the fly, stopping at the point with a nice smooth body, advancing your thread forward to the end of where your butt will end up. Okay? What we're going to be doing is taking our floss, and I don't know if you can see the fine wire, and twisting together. One of the problems with twisting floss and wire is if you don't do a small pre-twist of the floss prior to laying the wire alongside of it, what you're going to do is bury your wire into the floss. We will then take and either with a shepherd's wand or any other tool you'd like, twist your floss, and I don't know if you can see this in the camera, but you end up with a barber pole effect of your floss along with your wire. This will then be wrapped forward onto your hook, creating a very tight and a very strong twisted butt for your fly. The tendency of most butts of floss on flies are that a fish's tooth will in fact cut into your floss and destroy your fly, and then you end up with, as a friend told me, a trailing shuck on a steelhead fly. As you notice, I brought the entire material body along the bottom of the hook forward. I do that because I like to keep my bodies nice and even and run them smooth. Tail is going to be from a dyed red golden pheasant crest. What you're going to look for is a particular feather with a nice little shape to it, and you're going to attach it to the very top of the hook as a tail. Some people like to use various hackles. I prefer the golden pheasant. I just like the sheen of the fly from the fact that the golden pheasant has a sheen to it. Tie this in as you would any other tail along the top of the hook. I like the natural curve. One of the things that happens with natural curve is in the water it'll actually flatten itself out. Okay, once I've attached my tail, I'm going to attach my rib. My rib is a large oval tinsel. I attach this to the bottom of the hook starting at the return wire of this particular 2051, and again running it entire length of the hook along the bottom and cutting off any of the excess. One of the things to give yourself a nice neat looking fly is always run your material across the entire length of the hook shank itself. Body, ostrich herl. When you're looking at ostrich herl, especially for bodies of flies, you're looking for as long a barbel stem as you can get, because it's going to make the difference on how many times you may or may not have to add to it. On this point, it's unnecessary to take right and left sides. I grab anywhere from 6 to 10 strands, remove them from the body. Make sure I've got my tips evened out. You're going to lose a few when that happens. I tie it in by the tip and bring it forward. One of the things that I also do is at the same time, once tying in the ostrich, if you're looking for an additional strength, one of the things you may want to do is add to that some silver wire. The silver wire will add strength to the body, and at the same time guarantee that any fish fish's teeth will not, in fact, destroy your fly. You can use a thread loop, or you can use the wire. The wire adds a tiny bit of glint, but not enough to be an issue. But what it does do is it adds the strength that you really are going to need for this particular fly. Twist the ostrich herl and the wire together. Bring in your ostrich herl forward. With each wrap, what I like to do is, in fact, make sure that I pull my herl in a rearward direction so that I end up with this nice full body. The advantage of ostrich herl, as opposed to cotton chenille, like marabou, it doesn't create any weight, but it does create the look of bulk, and that effect gives you a fly that will sink better and get you a lot deeper within a given hole than if you had to turn around and work off of a shooting hen or any other material. One of the problems that you run into when you're using ostrich is, again, as I mentioned, trying to find as long the herls as you can so that you can make an entire fly out of it. This one's going to come out just about right. The other thing that's kind of nice about ostrich, if this thing did come out short, I would have been able to add the, got caught. I would have been able to add more herl to this fly if needed. And as you've never done before either, I broke my thread, so I will restart. I was going for one more turn and tie off. And there's your ostrich herl body. Bring your rib forward, 4 to 5 turns. The amount of turns is dependent upon the look you're looking for the fly. Traditionally, it's a 4-turn turn. Some like 3, some like 5. I think the tyer is the one who should decide as to how many turns you're looking for. I don't think it makes a difference to the fish if it's 4 turns, 5 turns, or 3 turns. The amount of turns, obviously, because it is, in fact, oval tinsel, is going to add to the glint of the fly, either more or less, and create the effect. Hackle. Hackle has historically been schleppen and other stuff. Neck hackle. I prefer to use dyed pheasant rump. It gives it a whole different dimension to the fly, and when it's fishing in the water, it's almost like a spay hackle, but not quite. So look for a nicely dyed, large rumped feather. You can either use the shorter ones at the lower end, or if you're looking for a lot more movement, then you'd be looking for the feathers further off into the tips. Choose your particular hackle you're looking for. The style I use is called a wet fly fold. I tie my hackles in by the tip and not by the butt, as so many other folks do. So pre-trim my material, lay it on top, tie down the material. I then take the back side of my scissors and I fold my hackle. There are great little tools on the market, and there are other things that you can get on the market that will give you a fold. I just prefer using my scissors. It gives me a nice long stem to work with, and a lot easier to tie. I don't need the additional tools if I don't need them. Okay, couple turns of hackle, couple turns of thread, tie it off, clip the excess off the bottom. As I told you, this is a green-butted skunk. I will use skunk as the white part of the wing. Skunk itself is probably the best substitute I have found for polar bear, which is one of the original materials used in it. Quite a few people like to use kiptail. Some will also use bucktail, but I just like the sheen and the gloss and the glisten of skunk. Choose a few fibers of skunk, removing it from the skin, cleaning out the underfur. Straighten the tips. Measure your wing. I tend to like to cut my wing prior to tying in because I don't like the excess bulk the wing gives you if you tie it in after, if you cut it after you've tied it in. Lay it on top. I take a couple of turns of thread on it, pull my wing rearward a little bit to the exact position I want to leave it, finish off my head with a nice even head, create the whip finish, And as soon as you're done with your whip finish on your head, at this point you could add your head cement and the fly is finished. Green-butted skunk, twisted butt. The advantage is the butt is, again, not going to be damaged or destroyed by the fish. Adds a little aesthetic to it, and I just love the sheen, as you can see within the lighting here, that the skunk will give you as opposed to bucktail or kiptail. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay, we're going to work on iridescence on bronze rooster feathers. You find them on tail. This is a pattern that a friend of mine gave me for sea run fishing on the Alsea River. So first thing we're going to do is going to tie in our little tag. Silver side is going to be showing. So that means for you beginning fly tyers, that's the opposite side, the gold side goes out. So we're going to wrap about 5 times back and about 5 times forward. Just enough to give it a little bit of flash. There we go. You know, work it back again. If you're watching this fly, you'll see your material flatten out, and that's a good thing. That way you don't have your tensile bunched up. Just a few wraps to secure it. We don't need to get too carried away. Next will be the floss. I'm just using regular 4-strand floss that's red. This will actually bleed out a little bit in the water, but that's okay because it's just a little bit of color contrast from the black. This is a dark colored fly and fished real well in off-color water or in clear water, depending on where you're at. Most of the coastal streams have a green hue to them, and during steelhead season, and that's what we're really trying to do is catch sea runs during the steelhead for winter fish. We tie it forward like this, like I did, and then you tie back. This does 2 things. It allows you to build up a floss body, which instead of wrapping it 4, 5, 6 times back and forth, you just do it 1 time as you see, and then 2 wraps over to secure the material. And you got a nice little body there. Next, once you get that out of the way, is you get your some fine silver oval tinsel, tie that on the bottom, and work it forward. And get that out of the way using your little clamp or spring or whatever you have. Then some wool. I use wool, and this material is really nice. It holds water. There's other dubbings like rabbit, and you can use chenille and stuff like that, but I prefer wool. It's just my technique. Dubbing it on, nice even, just like so. And what we're going to do is work the material forward, keep it in about the same size as the floss is. You might have a 45 or 30 degree twist forward, and you get this right up on top of that steelhead flange. Once you've done that, you go ahead and grab your tinsel and spiral it up about a 45 degree turn, and you get about 4 to 5 different wraps up there, and bring it over a few times. And that's pretty much the body right here. Next, what you'll do is grab, I'm going to use the same material for the wing, which is this rooster feather. Strip it off a little bit. Snip. And let's tie this in. First off, we're going to pull the feathers back like so. Not quite that far back, but something like so, like that. So what we want to do is get a backward 45-degree conical type of bend in the feather. And what I'm going to do here is flip this quill over, if I can pull it out. Flip it over and back onto itself. This little trick, if I can do it, will allow you to wrap a little safer because you won't pull out so easily, okay? A lot of times you can pull your materials out at a critical spot and it kind of ruins your fly. You give new design. We're going to try to pull this back and pull these feathers back at about a 45-degree turn and wrap and twist the feather and hold them. By doing it like this, you'll have your hackles going back at about a 45-degree angle. And each feather is unique, as you can see. You'll have to massage it. And if you end up fighting the material, it's probably easier just to start over with the hackle. There we go. Not too many times, about 4 twists, a couple of wraps to secure everything. Cut. Be careful not to cut your thread. There's tricks to fixing that, but we don't want to do that. Pull it back just enough. And back wrap. Just enough to get that 45-degree for a wet fly. At this point, we're going to tie the wing in. Now, this is what's unique about the pattern. If you can see in the light, you'll see this iridescent look. We all know as fly tyers that peacock works really, really well in trout flies. However, fishing for sea runs, they like flash and motion. Motion is in feathers and fox. It's in marabou. Different types of material that moves. Now, sea run cutthroat chase their prey. Okay, so motion. Now, this is sparkly, so it will catch their eye and go after the fly. And that's what the purpose is. Just go ahead and pull off about a 1/2 inch of it and strip it down. And measure your wing, just like I have here, and measure the tip where it comes down to the tag, the back of the tag, or the back of the floss body, whatever you want. It's the tyer's choice. Myself, I'm going to go to the back of the tag. I want a little more wing. I grab it, I measure it again, then I cut the excess off so I don't have any overhang into the eye of the hook. And I just do a nice little trap it and just wrap. There we go. There we go. Looking on top of the fly to make sure everything's going to line up. And then here we go. You got a real quick head. It's all ready to go. You can whip finish with your hands or with a tool. I prefer tools. And just 4, 5, or 6 wraps, real good, like so. It's probably more than 5 or 6, but you can get the message. At this point, pull and cut it off. I don't use head cement because it's just an extra step, and I'll probably lose this fly in the rocks anyway. But if I was to sell this fly or anything like that or give it away, I'd probably put head cement on there. Recommend it. Now at this point, I want to open my scissors and just open up these feathers so they can breathe a little bit and flash. That's the key here. Remember earlier I mentioned motion, materials that have motion, marabou, Arctic fox, stuff like that. Flash is good too. And as you catch more fish, of course, it gets beat up and fish is even better yet. The name of this fly is, I truly don't know because a friend gave it to me when I was trying out a cane rod and I made a couple casts, hooked a nice fat sea run, and bought the fly rod. And he gave me the fly. And that's pretty much it. If you know the name, you're better off than I am. It just works.
My name is John Shuey. I'm from Salem, Oregon. I'm going to do a steelhead fly today that I call the spawning purple, which is a fly I devised about 15 years ago. And I tell people these days that it accounts for 80 or 85% of my summer steelhead every year. In my fly tying, I try to strive for that juncture between artistic fly tying and effective fly tying, and I think this is one fly that meets that juncture. Our tying thread is a single strand floss fed into a bobbin, in this case a fluorescent fire orange color. We're just going to attach that to the hook, progress backwards along the hook shank, and we'll stop when we reach a point just in front of the point of the hook right here, and then we'll reverse directions. Put a little bit of tension on the floss to make sure the wraps are tight, and now we just wrap backwards or forwards back up the hook shank till we get to the midpoint, and then we're going to start building a wing. My wing is going to be comprised of 4 different what we call spikes of purple marabou, but I'm just going to use the tip sections. So we're going to pluck out this little webby section right at the very beginning, and then we'll use about 1 inch of plume, pull all the fibers forward so that you're just using the even tip sections, and then we'll measure those so that the tips themselves extend just about to the bend of the hook. I'll cut it off at that point and then tie that right onto the top of the hook. And then we'll wrap the thread forward. And again, if we measure that, that wing extends just about to the bend of the hook or a little bit beyond. And again, there's going to be 4 of these, so we'll take another one, same kind of feather, a purple dyed marabou plume, pluck out that webby tip section, draw about 1 inch of fibers all the way to the top so that the tips are even, and then once again lay that on top to measure it. Now this time we're going to cut this second wing a little longer than we cut the first wing because we're tying it a little farther forward on the hook shank. So we'll cut that off at the tie-in point, lay it on top of the hook, and just tie it down. So now we have 2 wings tied in, and when they lay down along the shank, they extend just past the bend of the hook, but their tips come to the same point. And now we'll do that a 3rd time. Again, pull out the webby tip section, even up the tips, cut it off at just ahead of the tie-in point, lay it on top of the hook shank. That's number 3. And then we'll do the same thing with a 4th wing. So the 4 wing segments that we've done here are all identical, with the exception being that each one is cut slightly longer than the previous one so that the tip sections of each wing segment reach the same point just behind the hook bend. So there's our 4 wing segments tied in, and if I take my fingers and I hold them up in the air, you can see that they're each have about the same gap between the tie-in points here. Now I'm going to switch threads. In this case I'm switching to a fine dry fly quality thread, a 14-aught claret colored thread, and I'll switch these simply by holding on to both and then running the new thread backwards over the first thread, and that binds down both threads, and we'll cut these tag ends off. Now we take a purple hackle, a neck hackle, Chinese neck hackle dyed purple, and gently I will stroke the fibers backwards along the stem, and we'll tie this in by its tip, right in front of that last wing that we tied down. We'll tie it in securely, cut the tip section out, so there's our hackle tied in. Then we're going to take the blade of our scissors and use the scissor blade to fold those fibers backwards on the top section of that stem. All we do is we rake the scissor blade along the top of the stem, and that folds the fibers backwards. And then we simply wrap this hackle. Now I'm going to use my left hand here to guide all the hackle fibers so they flow backwards. So every time I come around with one turn of hackle, I use my left hand to gently grasp all the fibers and stroke them backwards. Make about 5 turns of hackle, and then tie that off. Cut out the tag end. Then again, I'll take my left hand in here and I'll stroke everything backwards and make a few extra thread wraps to hold everything down so it all flows in a backwards direction. Then we're going to add one more wing of purple marabou. Just like we did the other four, we pluck out the tip section, use about 3/4 of an inch to an inch of stem fibers, and these also should reach, the tip should reach the same point as on the previous 4 wing segments. So these have to be cut even longer. I'm going to do one extra thing here. I'm going to take my fingernails and pluck some of the fuzz off the butt end there, because these are being tied in underneath the head. And again, tie those right to the front of the shank, right on top. So there's our completed wing with all 5 segments. Next step is to add some jungle cock eyes. So we'll take 2 fairly large jungle cock eyes. Try and get a couple of them that match up pretty well. There's our 2 jungle cock eyes. Now we'll just lay those eyes backside to backside, even up the tips. I like the eyes on this fly to be fairly long, so they'll actually encompass about 2/3 of the wing length or even a little bit more. Once my tips are evened up, I'll separate out a tie-in section, and below that section I'm going to strip off all these unneeded fibers. And we're going to do a little trick here. Now normally what you would do is mount one on one side and then mount the one on the other side. I'm going to do them both at the same time by first licking my fingers and then grabbing them right ahead of the tie-in point and then opening my fingers. One is stuck to each finger. Now all I need to do is just grab the fly. Make a few turns of thread, and the jungle cock eyes end up in the right place every time. Now I can add a few tighter thread wraps to lock them in place. And there's our jungle cock eyes. Trim off those butt ends. And the final step is to take an orange-dyed guinea feather hackle here, dyed hot orange. And again, we're going to tie this in by its tip, just like we did with the other hackle that we used before. I'm going to strip off all the stuff that I don't need, all this fuzzy stuff from below. So we're just left with the sweet spot of the feather. And again, we'll tie in by its tip. Cut off the tag end. Use our scissors to put a little bit of a fold in that feather. And then again, as I make my wraps, just like we did with the purple hackle earlier, I'm going to use my left hand to stroke all those fibers so they flow backwards. So every time I come around with the hackle, I take my left hand and start stroking those fibers to the rear. Clip off the butt end, and then we can go ahead and finish the head. One thing about the head on the fly is I actually want to take my thread, and once I've kind of finished the front part of the head, I'll take the thread and run it backwards up onto the last turn of that guinea hackle, because that's the most vulnerable part of the fly and also quite brittle. And by taking the thread back up onto that hackle, we lock that in place and prevent it from being chewed out by the first fish that eats the fly. Add a whip finish. And there's our completed spawning purple.
Hi, my name is Michael T. Williams. I'm from Eugene, Oregon. I grew up in this area, was born in Eugene, and I have fished the McKenzie and Willamette systems for more than 50 years. The fly I'm going to demonstrate today is one that came to me about 4 or 5 years ago. I've named it Michael T's Percolator. It's very similar to a stimulator in concept. As a matter of fact, that's really how it was born. I actually purchased a couple of stimulators about 5 years ago. I thought they were too large for the water I was fishing, and I carried them for a year before I even used them. And I remember putting one on a hot summer day, 100 degrees it was, on Salt Creek above Oak Ridge that day, and fish were chasing it all over the place. So I was really convinced, and I started working on my own pattern. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate here, please. I like to start the thread pretty close to where I think the body is going to end and where the wing is going to begin. It's an approximation, but it helps me get rolling. And I wind well back on the shank of the hook. And I use moose, dark moose, for the tail and the wing on this fly. And the way I tie this, I like to have a couple inches of thread here available so I can make some loose wraps down the body, thereby controlling the moose. And then when I come back towards the bend, I start to put some tension on it, still holding at the tail, very important, still pinching. And then back forward again. And then back to the bend. And this is one of the strong points of this of tying flies in this fashion. I'm going to use this copper ribbing to actually secure the hackle, and you'll see how in a moment. My favorite way to tie this fly, you can use any body type or color, is with peacock herl. I really like its iridescence. And I'm sure, I think I remember someone saying, being quoted, anything with peacock will catch fish, and it's certainly been good to me. I'm really big on cement, particularly with this delicate peacock. I figure if I'm going to tie a fly, I want to do my best to make it bulletproof. You notice I tied the peacock in by the tips, the weaker area. Yeah, if we could only get this kind of peacock all the time today. And I choose a brown hackle, and typically about one hackle size undersized via the hackle gauge for the size of hook. And by the way, this is a size 8, happens to be a Tiemco 200R. Yeah, where'd those hackle pliers go? And then for a size 8, I usually use about 8 wraps approximately. I don't know that it makes a heck of a lot of difference. It kind of depends on whether you want it to float a little more or sink a little more. And this fly will work both on the surface, awash, and underneath the water. And wiggling this copper wire back and forth may take a couple of times to get the hang of it. Did me. Wiggling it back and forth will allow you to go through there without really pinching more than just a couple of the hackles. And when using scissors on wire, use the big part right here, right down close. I don't try to cut this wire close. Rather leave a little tag because that's securing the whole body there. So then I can overwrap the thread and really bind it down well. Here's the mousse I'm using. Good old dark mousse. I like mousse for this fly because it's incredibly strong, and it's in my bulletproof philosophy, if you will. I like the wing fairly short, generally extending no more than about halfway to the tail. And I'm from the school that I like to cut this before I put it on. I feel it gives me a lot more control. So I measure it, then of course cut on that approximate 45 to give the tapered effect. And be sure to pinch the wing with your left hand or right hand, whatever you're holding it, while you're winding it down. Even if you wound it down, you can actually adjust it, I have found, if need be. Another secret of this fly is cement at this point. It's going to secure that wing, and it will also allow this grizzly hackle to be wound into cement. And for this front hackle, I typically like to see it two sizes too small for the hook. And I typically like to use a hackle that's stronger than this. Boy, those kind of things like that used to frustrate me when I first started tying flies as a kid. And depending upon the size of the fly, I'll put 4 to 8 wraps up here. That's right, that's a half hitch. I've never learned to do a whip finish. There you have it. Michael T's Percolator. In my opinion, a near bulletproof fly. Fabulous on trout, on top of the water, underneath the water, awash, as I indicated before, and I tie this in size 4 through 14. Predominantly, I fish 8s, 10s, and 12s. Thanks a lot.
Well, hi, my name is John Rozanich, and I'm going to tie a fly here that we developed last year. in the interest of bonefish and the need for a fly that feels real and looks more along the lines of what the bonefish were eating out on Christmas Island. Here's a finished product. It's called a Softex shrimp, and what it represents are the mantis shrimp that exist on in the island of Christmas, or Kiribati, out in the South Pacific. And very simple fly to tie. It's a quick pattern and very, very functional. What we need are some materials, and we'll start with a hook. It's a bit unconventional as far as a tie goes, because what we're going to do is, believe it or not, mount the hook in backwards for part of the tie. The first thing we're going to do is add the weight. This is a keel-weighted fly, so that when the fly is cast and it sinks, it's going to ride with the hook up. The dorsal coloration of the fly will also be applied to the top, but for starters, we're going to add some weight. And the way I do that, simply by starting with a course of thread and lead. Now, you're going to adjust the lead to the weight of the fly that you want. But what I found was an interesting technique where I take a section of lead wire that's approximately about 1.5 to 2 times the length of the shank of the hook. And what I do is just secure it down loosely on one side, trim the material off at an angle towards the bend of the hook, and then apply another length of lead aside the first and on top of the hook shank. All right, and also trimmed off, and using the nail or maybe even the bodkin to push down the sharp edges. In addition to that, there's a third section of the lead that's also secured relatively loosely to the top, and you can see that's spinning, but to the top of the hook, which actually is the bottom of the hook. What I'm going to do is trim that off. There we go. And then just work it down with my thumbnail so that we don't have any sharp edges sticking out. I make sure that that's kind of a nice even bundle. Now what I've done is I've laid 2 pieces of lead side by side on the shank, and then I've added a third one on top. And what that's going to do is give a nice little keel weighting to the fly. Finish it off with just a couple of half hitches or your favorite knot. And then trim the thread. Prepare a few of these hooks ahead of time with the lead. It'll make your tying much faster. Because what you're going to do now is add a material called Softex, a generous drop of it, to this whole bundle of lead. And what that is going to do is not only adhere or glue the fly weight to the hook, but it's also going to tighten it up so that it is pulled tight against the hook and it won't spin, and also give you a nice base, a nice soft base, non-slippery base for you to tie lead onto, or your thread onto. So what I do is remove this hook and set this over in my fly stage for it to dry. Handy tool, by the way. Now I've made one ahead of time, like they do in those cooking shows. And as you can see, this is a nice pack of lead that's tied onto the hook. It's strong, it's not going to spin, and not cast off during the application. All right, so let's start the process of tying. As I mentioned, what we're going to do is be a little bit unorthodox here, and I'm actually going to turn the hook around. There we go. And we're going to tie by holding the eye. And a real simple process. We're going to start by adding some thread. This is going to secure the materials. And what we're going to add at this point here are some tentacle. And I'm just going to grab off from the bottom of a hackle just some of the downy material that you see, a section of kind of marabou-y type material. I don't know the actual technical term for it. And some of the long schlappeny barbs that are down in the lower section of a hackle. This is going to be the mandible or the different mouth pieces and all the moving parts. I'm just going to add that on top of the lead. As I said, this is going to be a very quick tie. It's just sticking out forward, kind of in an abstract way. What they're going to do is suggest motion. And that section of a shrimp is oftentimes moving because it's taking water in and it's tasting things, and you got to move that around to the dorsal side of that hook. There we go. Very simple. All right. Not complicated at all. Now what we're going to do is take some monofilament. This is burnt monofilament eyes, a process that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. Very simple technique where you take monofilament, you put it up against the flame, it melts, and you got yourself some nice, inexpensive eyes. And what I'm going to do is take that eye, bend it slightly at about a 90-degree angle so that it'll move away from the body. And you can even bite it with your teeth a little bit, kind of crease it. There we go. I'm going to lay that parallel to the shank, and just so that it pops out a little bit beyond the bend of the hook. And then I'm going to anchor that down. There's a nice little space for it to tie in between the hook shank and that first course of lead that's underneath the hook shank. And if this fits in there beautifully. And I've got it so that it kind of cants away also from the fly itself. I'll add the second one so that it's symmetrical to the first. There we go. And again, these are all just loose ties, almost a casual way of putting the fly together. Oops. Make sure you don't tie the eyes down too tightly, and leave them loose so that they can be pulled out and adjusted accordingly. As eyes on a shrimp tend to move around quite a bit. They'll be rather mobile. Okay. Trim off the excess. I'm going to add the antenna. And the antenna is just a really tier's choice, but in this case, I'm choosing a section of crystal flash, and this happens to be olive crystal flash. Great material. It's 2 antennae. These are optional, and also the colors are optional depending on where you are and what you're tying for and what effect you're looking for. Length, maybe 2 times the hook shank. I just move them out the front. Put a couple loose wraps of thread. You can even bend one back, or bend this back if you want to be efficient and kind of frugal with your materials. Doesn't have to be the same length. Oftentimes in nature you'll find that very few insects or animals that live there have perfect bodies. They get chewed on and munched on quite regularly. Okay, we got a couple of antennas sticking out, and they can be on top or below the eye. Doesn't really matter. They're really more there for our effect. At this point here, I'm going to add a piece of wire. This is either gold or silver fine wire, and it's going to be tied in. Oh, didn't lose it. It's been hell since I turned 40. My eyesight's going. So that's going to be tied in and actually pulled forward, okay, so that it actually moves. All right, so it's sticking out towards the front of that fly. Now, I'll move the thread to the back, and we're going to tie in the body material. The body material is going to be this poly yarn, or I think it's called fake fur, boy, any number of names. And what I've done is I've cut a section. It comes in a swath, a synthetic swath, you know, very large. Sometimes you find rugs or carpets or bedspreads made out of it. And this is just a section I carry around with me. As you can see, it's long fibers, synthetic, so it won't rot, bleach out, or anything like that. And I've taken a nice chunk and I've cleaned out, as you would with deer hair, I've taken out the shorter, you know, almost like the insulating hairs. It's kind of an odd term because this is a synthetic material, so they're really not insulating, but there's a shorter section of hair or fur inside this long length, and I've trimmed that out very much like you would do a deer hair. Now what I'm going to do is start with there's a pointy section, or a thin section, where the materials taper to, and then there's the square section where we've cut off and it's also a little thicker. I'm going to tie that in right behind the lead, and it's going to fill that void right behind the lead. And don't worry about anything sticking up. Anything fuzzy like that is probably a benefit. Okay, and I'm tying that back almost to the eye. I'm leaving about a 1/16 or a 32nd of an inch to that. And believe it or not, what I'm going to do at this point here is trim off my thread and put in a couple of half hitches. And that's the last we're going to use of the thread. Interesting. Now, nothing to be afraid of. The rest of this fly is actually tied down with the wire. So, what I'll do is trim off the excess, throw the excess away. Then I'm going to coat the underside of the fly and the threads with Softex, and the top side. And what this is going to do is it's going to lock all of the threads together and give the fly a nice soft feel. Okay. On the dorsal ridge, lock all the threads together. It's also going to penetrate the threads. It's going to lock in all of the eyes and the fibers and that sort of thing. Very fast drying material, never cracks, chips, or peels, and it'll always stay nice and pliable and soft so it feels real to the fish. What we found on Christmas Island was that when the bonefish picked up these shrimp, which was a replica of what was living in the area, these are basically baby mantis shrimp, they picked them up and they felt real, and they were taking them actually down too deep into their mouth, back behind the crusher. We had to modify our catching or our fishing technique to strike sooner so that we were assured a lip hook and not to pass on minimum injury to the fish. Okay, that being said, what I'm going to do is apply the carapace. Now the carapace is nothing more than just a hackle, and it's been processed with the Softex. This happens to be a bleached hackle. It's a grizzly style, as you can see, and the light muted colors are actually more true to what exists in nature. You can see this fish, or this fly has very little flash to it. The reason is because nothing in nature is really that flashy, particularly the shrimp that are trying to hide from predators. Anyways, the way we make or process the hackles to be used as a carapace is very simple. Again, it's using the material Softex. And what we do is loosen the lid. I'm going to use a darker hackle here so that it can be seen maybe a little bit better on the video. This is just an olive grizzly, and lower quality hackles are better. Some that have a little more schlappening or barbules to them to give it a little more webbing, a little more color. Those are good. What we're going to do is just dunk the hackle into the Softex, drag it out over the lip of the jar. You can also use a technique with the bodkin, where you can kind of squeegee it between the bodkin and the glass. Put the lid back on, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this down onto this piece of ceramic material. Okay, secure the lid of the Softex, and we'll set it aside. I don't know if this is visible or not, but what we've done is laid the hackle down onto this ceramic material. And what it's going to do is it's going to glue itself down and dry to a flat surface. Now what I'm doing here is kind of preening the material so that they come out wide and don't have any wastes to them or any sort of contours that I don't want. I want this nice and broad and the maximum amount of surface area to work with. That's going to take, maybe an hour or so to dry. Oftentimes what I'll do is lay out several of them on a ceramic surface like this, or a piece of glass or a mirror, and even on the window if you're in a pinch in a hotel room or something. And the next morning, go to bed at night, and the next morning just peel them right off. They're ready to go. The process is real simple. A razor blade is not required. If this hackle was adhered down and completely dried, what we would do is just pick up an end and then just peel it right up. And what you're left with is a hackle that is now transformed into a piece of plastic and will now work as a carapace. So let's apply it. Anyway, what we're going to do is the pointy end of the fly, or the hackle, is actually going to be the rostrum, the pointy forward section, which works as a place to camouflage or hide the eyes on the shrimp. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a small cut, about 1/4 of an inch long, right down onto the quill of this, so that the quill will split at the tip. I don't know if that's visible, but it's split at the tip. And the reason for that is it's actually going to slide right on each side of that hook. And then it's going to be anchored down with the wire. So I'll attach the wire to the hackle pliers sooner or later. There we go. Yeah, that's it. And now this is the fun part. And I'll try to turn this so that it's visible. Whoops. I just moved the vise. That's a fatal error in video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the hackle and I'm going to put it down so that it's on each side of the hook. Whoops, come on, guy. I promise it does work. There we go. There we go. That forms the rostrum. I'm going to cut it a little bit longer. That's probably what it wants. Instead of a quarter, we'll move it up to about 3/8. There we go. Now again, I'm going to slide that hackle over, there we go, the bend of the hook. All right, and I'm going to adjust it so that the quill is on the dorsal ridge after I do something else. First, we got to put the body material down. Boy, having not tied one of these in public or for a couple of months, you're going to forget your steps. Anyways, let's go back a little bit. First thing we're going to do is actually take the body material that we tied in and pull it forward on the underside of the fly. Okay, we're going to move it around so that it covers all the lead and comes up on the sides, covers the sides of the fly real well. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a wrap or two of the wire around it, and that's going to hold it into place. There we go. There we go. So you can see you're going to have to adjust the eyes as you tie, just by pulling on them. There we go. Now we're ready to go. At this point, we'll slide the hackle in. Come on, boy. There we go. Use the quill as a guide for the dorsal ridge. There we go. Bend the hackle down around. And now I'm going to put a twist of the hackle over. Okay. Let me pull out some of these. Oh, I apologize for not even knowing all of the steps from my material, but or my fly pattern here. But anyways, what we're going to do is just put a wrap around, and just as you would wrap down, there we go. Lengthen this out a little bit. Boy, can't even see it. Just as you would wrap down a nymph, put the ribbing on any of the other flies, we're doing the same thing here. Now, a little trick that's going to happen is as you roll up the wire on this side, you're going to have to hold down some of that hackle. Okay, you see how that's working? We're coming close to the back end, so this is actually going to fold under. There we go, and it's going to go around. Good. Now I'm going to pull the hackle forward, and I'm actually just going to put a couple of wraps, finish the wraps of the wire onto the hook, and then it'll stay all by itself. Pull the hackle back, trim it off. And you can see how it forms a tail. I'm going to split it so that you can expose the eye of the hook. And now I'm going to just clean the fly up so it looks good. What I'm going to do here is pull the eye out so that the rostrum goes around the front. I'm going to bend the eye. Bend the eyes back. There we go. Make sure that the antennae are moving in the right direction. Take some of the soft text. Now you see how the rostrum is split here. And what I want it to do is come together. I'll do that very easily. I'll hit the back of the body with some soft text, and I'll run that up onto the rostrum. And the rostrum will then glue together. Just like this. There we go. That soft text takes a couple seconds to set up. When it does, it is permanent. There we go. You blow on a little bit as I'm doing. That sets your rostrum, and then pull it apart in my adjustment process. There we go. Let's do that. What I'm going to do is take a good coating of Softex, and I'm going to run it down the body of the fly and coat that hackle that we'll be using as the body, and also coat the wire that's attached to it. And that'll permanently attach the wire and the hackle together and form a nice soft carapace over the entire body. So when a fish picks this up, they're going to think that they've got something real in their mouth because it feels real. Because the idea here is that the shrimp replicates the food that the fish is feeding on in the water. All right. The animation is going to be the little movement that we're going to give it. Some of the materials are going to, move around and be influenced by the flow of the water and the currents around it. But fish have their tactile senses in their mouth. So when they pick up this fly, it's going to feel real. And we can make it taste real by putting a flavor on it, but that's always a question of ethics. But in this case here, what we've done is we've developed a pattern that not only looks real, acts real, but also feels real to the fish. And then some final trimming. It's going to be done with the scissors, and I'll just pull some of these hairs apart, shred them a little bit. You can also tie in little sections of it and bend them back if you want to create legs further back. But we're going to just trim this up as I'm doing here, just kind of teasing and ratting, doing kind of a rat cut. That way we've got legs sticking out, all over the place, as a shrimp does in nature. There we go. Teasing it up and getting the right length that I want. Being careful not to cut off my antenna, which has been done. There we go. Don't want too much of a square cut as I'm getting here. I want more of an uneven cut. There we go. Pulled back sideways. And you can go in and trim the material so that you don't have a heck of a lot of unnatural look to it, but more of a natural display of leg. And since on a shrimp everything is forward, there we go. This will look real natural. Good. And that's basically it. A very quick tie. Remove it from the vise. I'm going to turn it around in my hands, and I'm going to clip it on again. Because right where I put in that wire, I'm going to put just a little bead of Softex to adhere that wire down. There we go. This goes right on those wraps of the finishing wire, kind of like the head of a fly. And that's it. As you can see, we've got a couple other patterns, a couple of similar patterns to the one we've just tied. Here's this one in a lighter format. We also have it in the gray, and basically any color that you want. A very fast tie, a very practical tie, minimal material, so that when you travel to an exotic destination, you don't have to carry a lot of things with you. And that's it. That is the soft shrimp. Feels real to the fish, and very simple to tie, and something that'll catch a lot of fish for you. Anyways, enjoy. Hope you enjoyed the tie, and good luck and go fishing. See ya.
Hello, I'm John Graves. I'm from Vancouver, Washington, and I'm going to be tying an offshoot of the bikini fly. Start here with some wraps on the hook. And I take the excess off. And I just be rotating this toward me to lay down a base on the fly. And I'll go back up, and I'll stop right behind there. Then I'll be taking some crystal flash tying it in where I stopped up front. A couple of wraps, just holding it in. I go back toward the bend of the hook. And stop right there. Then I want the tail, about so much of a tail, and cut it. Makes that real sparkly. Then I take my bobbin here. I'm going to make a dubbing loop right where I ended it. I wrap halfway up. So I'm going to make two halves of the body, a rear half and a front half. Before I start that, I will be putting a couple of half hitches in the middle to hold my line for when I dub the body in. And I will be taking some iridescent dubbing and sticking it in between the two spots in my line, like so, and like so. Then I bring the two together and I twist away from it, away from the eye of the hook. And it will spin like so. We'll be pulling it up. I'm making a body with it, sort of like chenille. And twist it some more. Pull some of the excess out that we don't need. And scoot it up some more. And then that's what's good about these Norvices. You don't have to go over and over and over. You can just sit here and you can hold it like this, and you just bring it towards you. It's just like going like this. If you do it towards you, you're dubbing a body in there with this iridescent dubbing. You stop about halfway, which right there should be fine. And switch hands so you can come down here and tie it in. As the rear half is pink, is hot pink. That'll be the hot pink back. I'll put two more half hitches in it, like so. Just 1, 2, to hold it in place. And then I will be doing another dubbing loop to go with the front half, which will be an orange color. Put my little tool right in there, and I will be taking the orange dubbing This is more the iridescent dubbing. And sticking it in between the two things of thread. Just like so. And then do just like I did on the rear half. Twist it away from you. And it will start spinning. like so. And then you can pull up, work it forward to where you can get right in there, and then you can twist it some more. It looks just like chenille, but real thin. Pull off some of the excess. Then we can do just like I did on the back half, instead of going over the hook, rotate the vise towards you. And you get rid of this iridescent dubbing. It's real sparkly. It's got several different kind of colored strands in it. Stop right about there. Bring the bobbin back behind it. Tie it in. Tie it in, then we can cut off the excess here. And you can trim this if you'd like. Don't have to. But you don't want it real bushy, and you don't want it not bushy enough. About like that. Then I'll be taking a soft hackle, hot pink, for a hackle. Now I put it in backwards. I cut here and here. You got barbs on this side, barbs on this side, to where the line will grab a hold of it and hold it down on the hook. So when you start palmer it in there. About 3 wraps, and I half hitch it a couple times just to make sure it holds it in there. Catch it in the back, pull it down. And then if you would like, you can take your hackle pliers, or you can do it by hand. Grab a hold of the tip of the hackle and turn the hook towards you. Go around about 3-4 times, however bushy you'd like it. You want to switch hands and bring this through there. About 2 times would be fine for the time being, and snip off what you got left right here. Then I take the hackle, bring it back, put a little base on it there where it's going back, like so. And now we'll be taking some of the pink crystal flash, and I take it out about so far, about that long. Bring it over on the top. A couple of wraps, maybe 3. Then here on the back, where I got my fingers at, I snip that off of there. I do it this way because I've already got tied down once here. I bring this back over itself, and you're tying back over itself to hold it down a little better. If a fish happens to hit it, they won't pull out. The chenille, the crystal flash, you got for a wing. Now I take my little whip finish, go in there, in the groove. Looks like a number 4. Go around 3 times. I don't use any glue, so that's 1 time I went around it. I go twice instead of having to use the glue. Real simple fly, a real hard tie, goes real quick, and that's what you end up with. Fly looks like that. You might want to trim just a hair off of here. That's what the finished product looks like.
Hi, my name is Jack Schlatter. I'm from Medford, Oregon, and I design flies for Umpqua Feather Merchants. Today I'm going to tie the Rogue Foam Stone Golden variety. Okay, we start this fly using 3/0 monocord, and we're going to tie the first part of the body on a needle. This uses a strip of 1/8 inch closed cell ethafoam, and you just place it on the needle, slide it up so that it butts up against your thread, and start the segmentation. There's the first segment. Move your thread forward underneath the foam. There's a second segment. There's the third segment. Okay, now we're going to just make a quick whip finish on that. Just a couple of turns. And take that off. Just slides right off. And take your scissors and notch that back segment. Okay, get rid of the needle. And we're using a size 6 TMC 200R. Good idea to squash the barb on it, which we'll do. Okay, cover the shank of the hook with thread back to a point right over the barb. Let your thread hang. And I like to take a little bit of gel type super glue and just put a thin bead of it on the hook. So the combination of the thread and the super glue will really lock this foam on so it doesn't twist. Okay, take that third segment and put it right where you ended your thread, right over the barb. Anchor it in with about 5 turns of thread. Then you just come forward on your hook shank, tie one segment in, come forward again, another segment. Okay, forward again with a third segment. All right, now just take your scissors and kind of prune up these little wings and wind that foam down so it's got a nice little taper on the front of the hook. Okay, leave your thread right in front of that. Straighten everything out, and that super glue will anchor that in. This is a Pantone number 154 pen, and I'm going to put a little color on the top and the sides of this foam body. And if you want that color to stay, it's a good idea to take some thinned flex cement and coat it, and then that smooths out the color and it fixes the color so that it won't wash out. Even though it's a permanent marker on this foam, it'll wash out if you don't fix it. Okay, so that's that. That's the start of the body. Okay, now we're going to take a strand. We want to put 6 or 8 strands of crystal flash, and the way we'll do that, you don't need much. If you take one strand and snip it in half, and then fold it, and snip it in half again. Okay, that's 4 of them. Now if we just take that, fold it around the thread, and slide that up right on top of the fly, make a couple of anchoring turns, come across it, and just let it sit right up there on top. Okay, now the wing is a piece of normal Ethaphone packing foam, and it's also colored with the 154 pin and fixed with thinned flex cement. And when you spread the thin flex cement around, it kind of mutes the color so you have that kind of golden color. All right, so we're going to put that right on top of the crystal flash. And you can use orange or yellow or even pearl crystal flash. It's not really critical. So we hold that on top, make a couple of turns, then kind of exit without crossing through a segment because that'll flare it. Trim off our excess, come back on our crystal flash and trim it, a little bit longer than the wing. Okay, so we have the crystal flash on, we got the wing on. Those are the 2 underwings. Okay, now the main wing is bleached moose hair. Take about, 2 matchsticks worth. Clean it and stack it. And we're going to tie that directly on top, get rid of the shorties, directly on top and about the same length, maybe a 1/4 inch longer than that wing. So we hold it directly on top, make a couple of tight turns. It's in there now. Now I'll come back across the first segment, and what that'll do, that'll hold the wing so it doesn't flare upwards. You want this to lay flat, pretty much like the real bug. Okay, so now it's on top. We're going to trim these ends by taking all of them together, lifting straight up, and that trims it at 45. Now we're going to take full strength flex cement and if I can find, that'll work. Just use a toothpick or whatever you want. And let's get a little flex cement on this wing. That strengthens it a little. Okay. And we're going to wind down the front. So we got a nice taper. And spread it a little bit with our thumb so it lies flat. Okay. Now the head, or the bullet head, is golden brown elk. And we take about a pencil's worth of that, trim it, clean it, and stack it. If you're going to tie many of these flies, it's a good idea to stage tie them. That way the flexament gets a chance to dry between the steps. Take your thread, put it right behind the eye. Okay, there's our stacked elk hair. Get rid of the loose ones. You can trim the ends to square. It's really not critical, but it helps sometimes. Okay, so this is about from the point of the hook to the eye of the hook in length. And you just put it directly over the hook eye to you, right in the middle. So it's 360 degrees around it, and you can feel the hook eye with your fingers. Just drop your thread over 1 time, 2 times, grab that hair, tighten down on it, and then turn it until it stops turning. Wind back through it, leave your thread at the back end. All right, now we got to trim all that. All these short ends. All right, that ought to about do it. Okay, now take your thread and wind down through those ends, and that really locks that head in there. It isn't going to go anywhere. Give yourself a nice, fairly smooth surface. And take your thread back about 1/4 inch. Make sure we don't have any long ones left. Okay, everything's still in place. That looks good. Okay, feel for the hook eye with your finger. And you want the hair spread at 90 degrees so it looks like this, if you look at it head on, looks like the spokes in a wheel. And if it's too close to the eye, you can just take a little hair packer and work it back a little. Sometimes that happens. Okay, so we're about ready to start that. Okay, you just reach around with your fingers, make a triangle with your fingers, reach around, slide the hair back, catch it, make 2 or 3 turns, and there's your collar. All right. Okay, we got 1 or 2 loose ones. We can pick those out. But good tweezers is really useful. All righty, now flip your fly over and make 1 cut across the bottom that exposes the bottom. Get rid of these hairs so you can see how that looks. All right, sweep the hair back, make a couple more turns. All right, now the legs, you can put flexament, before we start the legs, it's a good idea to put a little flexament on the head. That toughens it up, kind of seals it so it doesn't soak up water so fast. Makes it float a little better. Okay, the legs are pumpkin silly legs, and you cut 2 of them maybe 1 inch 1.5 long for this fly. Keep 2 of them together. They're pumpkin and they got black flecks in them. You fold that around the thread, slide it up, and place it on your side of the fly. Make 2 more turns, pick up the top leg, and just slide it around to the other side so that it's even. Okay, check it. The front, a little low. Slide it back up, slide this one up. There, that looks about right. Okay, now, whip finish. Trim your thread, look things over. Everything looks good. That's the Rogue Foam Stone Golden, complete.